questions that were, and the first thing I really want to emphasize is for everyone, not only to consider what we're doing in the physical temporary world, but also look at it from a very eternal and spiritual world that Christ teaches us through scripture. So last week, there was a question that was asked about life insurance, and I don't think I answered that fully. One of the things that people may mistakenly think is that once you purchase a policy of any kind, that you are obligated to stay with it the entire term of years or for the entire life policy. That is actually not correct. You can at any point surrender it and stop paying. So don't feel you're obligated to stay with it. So as you ask questions online or here in the audience, live participation, please make notes or in the chat or the question portion of the recording on the computer to ask the question, and I will repeat the question. So for the retirement planning process, important things to keep in mind is, again, this is not here for legal or tax or financial advice. This is just for general information for you to consider with your advisors to see what is best for your situation. Now, one of the hardest things I've noticed, not only for my clients, but even for myself as I think towards retirement, when my clients will allow me to retire, or if I die first, whichever comes first, you should really be thinking about what will you be doing or being in your first few months of retirement. Most people think they're just going to go home, lock the door at your work office, empty out your desk and take the box home with you. And when they get home, they're sitting in a chair with very little ideas of what you might be doing. And this can be very stressful. So I would even suggest for people as they approach retirement, probably within 5 years or less, to actually take the time to do the things that you think you're going to be doing in retirement. And so I would suggest that even you actually spend even a month with you and your spouse, if there is a spouse, to act like you're in retirement and go through the motions and see if that is actually what you want. If not, as I have talked to a number of couples over the years, after a few months of playing golf, they're bored. Or after a few months of doing whatever their hobby is, they're totally bored and they actually go back to work, either part-time or full-time. So you might want to consider something like that of what you will be doing and being in retirement. And so you might want to consider, as I said, the first year to 5 years of your official retirement date. You might kind of see what your interests are and see if it can be sustained over time. Because of as I said, a lot of people after a few months of retirement doing golfing or gardening or whatever, they can't stand it and they have to leave the house, and they also drive their spouse crazy. You may want to estimate the cost of retirement. Many people think they will spend less in retirement. That is not necessarily so. Some will travel more if and when they're allowed to travel. Some will want to move closer to their children and grandchildren. And depending on the cost of living where they are, it may change your expenses that you didn't even think about. The other one is moving your assets, your 401ks, your retirement monies, your 403bs, your 457, your pension plan. What I have noticed over the many, many years working with clients is the longer you are away from your work employment and your employer, the harder and harder it is to communicate with your former employer in terms of the benefits as a retiree and even how to access your retirement monies. And I've had experiences where it took us over 6 months to even move the 401k plans to something that they could control more locally. Another thing is to consider paying off all debt. You really want to be debt-free. Scripture is very, very clear on this, to be debt-free as soon and as well as possible. If you are overspending, that is a very stressful thing for most people. And as I was reading on one of the recent surveys, especially with the pandemic now, where people are losing their jobs and losing access to their assets, and the stock market being quite volatile, 75% of the participants are very stressed on how they're going to make it, not only in retirement, but even now in their day-to-day experience. I think I skipped one. Oh, yes. So some people want to consider downsizing, especially as people get older, and you may notice your joints don't work necessarily as well. And so I notice a lot of older couples are downsizing to single-story homes. They do not want to be going up and down, stairs. So this is something to think about. If you're already in a single-story home, you're at an advantage. So that's a great thing. Again, moving closer to children or grandchildren, we have some that actually go back to school and learn things that they had never had the opportunity while they were in their work years. Also volunteering. We know a number of people who volunteer, whether it's in the hospital systems or in at pet clinics or master gardening, any number of things that we can volunteer and benefit. And of course, volunteering here at the church is a great thing too. Now, the other thing that, you can only play golf and do a hobby for so long before people get kind of a little tired of it. So one of the things that it's often not thought of is one of your spouse, one of you might, if you're married, oftentimes one of them will pass prematurely. As I have shared in past years, my father passed at age 42 and left my mother at her age 42 with 5 children, no job, and very little put away. At age 42, it was very, I guess you could say, father took a very early retirement in many respects. So when your spouse passes unexpectedly, I'll talk a little bit more about that later on in today's session, because you do want to plan also, not that you're hoping for it, but you want to kind of be prepared in the event of a sudden passing of one or the other of the spouses, and how the family and the children and grandchildren will proceed from there. All right, so definitely I would encourage everyone, whether you're single, married, with or without children, with or without a blended family, to have what I call the conversation. A lot of times, especially I would say in the Asian community, it is often felt to be bad luck, or you want me to die so you can get my assets. But really, in a Christian community, I'm hoping that we would be a loving and sharing family and community. For in order to assist your family members to know what your wishes are, whether you're ill and incapacitated, or whether you have hidden assets that where the wills are, where the trusts are, who the contacts are, where all your accounts are, what are the passwords. These are important things. When my grandfather passed, we know he had a will. I think I was probably about 10 years old at the time. My grandfather was a Chinese herbal doctor. And so his office was in their home, and he had a beautiful room set up with all these artwork and all kinds of knickknacks and antiques and everything. And we know he hid his will somewhere. So my mother and my aunties and my grandmother spent a day going through every single book, flipping through, tearing things apart, trying to find his will. Well, they never found it, and he never told them where it was. So when they bulldozed the house, it was lost forever. So they had to go through intestate probate without a will, which in the state of Hawaii is a horrible way to go through probate without a will. And that's something you don't want to have. So have that conversation with your spouse, also with your children. If they are mature enough, you know where the maturity level of your children or your significant others, your siblings, your brothers, sisters are, if they can handle what you would like, if you're either incapacitated or if you have passed away, where your things are, where your accounts, your passwords, and all the contact people. And there is a handout, which I will get more of later. It's called, it's a booklet called Make It, I hope you all can see it, Make It Easy on Your Loved Ones. I will get more, so those that want a hard copy can have one. But in it, it actually lists all your contacts, important people, emergency contact information, your advisors, your attorney, your CPA, your financial advisor, where your valuable papers are. Now, one of the things people will tell me is that they locked up the will in their safe deposit box, and they put all the important papers in the safe deposit box. Problem is, if you have only your signature on the signature card, no one else can get in it. They would have to legally drill your safe deposit box to get your will, but then you'd probably be buried. And they won't know what your wishes were for your final burial. So important things, what I've done in my situation, I have a living revocable trust because I'm here in Houston, Texas, and my sisters and family members are in California and Hawaii. I do not want them to fly over to probate my estate here. And so I had my attorney do a living revocable trust. So my two sisters, who are my trustees, can become Karen Ho in effect and not even go through probate. And they can do everything they need to do from either California or Hawaii and not fly into Houston and go to find the probate court in Texas. So, when I did my living revocable trust, in my case, that I felt that was most appropriate. You may not need to do that depending on what you and your attorney discuss. You can list, where all your personal property is, where all your accounts are. You want to give them the passwords, you want to give them who the contacts are and kind of what the accounts are for, any investments and miscellaneous things like you may have purchased real estate elsewhere. If they don't know about it, they may never be able to find it and probate that either. You also all your health insurance, your property insurance, your life insurance, your annuities, your IRAs, your retirement plans, all of that is listed in this, that you can list in the booklet. Also nowadays, because we're so much online and we have so much LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, everything else, and you have all your pictures up in the cloud and everything. Some people may not want all that private information up for public consumption. So if you have those kind of accounts, one of the things you put in a booklet or some kind of place that you can keep it is where to your loved ones can actually turn those off and close those. So you don't necessarily want all your information so public. Okay, and your digital information, I should say. So I think a hard copy is very good because if the internet goes down, you have no access to anything digital. And so I think it's a great thing to either you make your own little booklet of information, or you can get something similar to what I'll be passing out more in future. Okay, so as you have the conversation with your spouse, your children, also your employer, I think you should always treat your employer with great courtesy and respect. You don't just show up one day and say, I'm quitting. You should allow them time and opportunity to train the next person for your position if that is necessary, and give them the minimum at least 2 weeks if it's kind of a day-to-day job, but if it's a more managerial job, I would even give your employer at least a year in advance. It takes a long time to find someone qualified. I've already told my former supervisor about 10 years ago that I was going to retire in 5 years. And he kept moving the goalposts. He said, no, I can't. So he would extend my 5 years every time. So that's one of the reasons I'm still working. Also for key people that you should let them know that you're going to be retiring. Share this information so that it's not a shock to those that are significant to you. Okay, one of the things is, and I recognize this, many people that we know in our church and our circle are very intelligent, and they can do a lot of things by doing their own research and taking steps in that respect. Yes, But we've seen, and I've worked with many highly educated people, very wonderful, intelligent people. But when it came to finances, they were clueless. And so we've already seen from numerous studies that those that seek, and this just came out in August of last year, this is the Economic Bureau of Research Institute. They ran some studies. They said one of the things that helped people prepare for their retirement was that they knew that they had guaranteed sources of income. They had this is what helped people in their retirement, that they had very low or no debt at the time they retired, that they had a clear strategy, an investment strategy and a spend down strategy. They knew what they were going to access first in their retirement years and when to pull the trigger on certain ones and turn them on. And also, one of the things that they found very helpful was having some kind of advisory service to kind of guide them through their blind spots and help them look at what they might be overlooking. And so those are the 4 key factors that facilitated having a more financial comfort as they went into retirement. Those that did not have professional guidance or some kind of guidance tended to, their strategy, and I've seen this, their strategy before they retire is to pile up as much money as they can and throw it on a table and then just randomly pull in their retirement from that pile of money. That not necessarily works out for people depending on how you pull. So there should be what I consider a guaranteed sources of income and how you pull down your assets in retirement over the next 10, 15, 20, or even 30 years. Now, the next one is going to be a number of blank pages, but do have your handouts. And this is just a hint sheet, retirement timetable. I believe all the online people have that. You can print it off, and people here participating live have a handout. And I'm going to go through this about at least 24 months before retirement. You might even want to do this, even 5 years before, and just fine tune it over time. But I'm going to go through this very quickly because you can read it for yourself. But if you have questions, please ask in the questions section and we can look at it more closely a little bit later. But you want to prepare a budget. Most people may or may not realize how much they're actually going to spend in retirement for healthcare. That's one of the often overlooked things. With the healthcare costs going up, that's kind of an unknown in many respects. Also, cost of living may change if you move. That'll be could be a very big significant issue. Also, if we're already in inflation. Inflation is being put at about 6 and 7%, but that is actually not the original definition of inflation. The original definition, they removed the cost of food and they removed the cost of energy, which to me are significant costs in inflation. By removing that, they were able to have a comforting looking 6 or 7% inflation rate. But actually, if you put those numbers back in, the inflation rate is about 15% right now, double or triple. And once we hit 50% inflation, we're going into hyperinflation, which some of the other countries around the world are experiencing right now. And they're seeing their purchasing power significantly be reduced, where their dollars didn't purchase very much. Their version of their dollars didn't purchase very much. So that's why you want to prepare a budget. But remember, a budget is not hard and fast rules. It is only a guideline that should be changed as your situation changes. So don't be afraid to change your budget. It is not something that you have to follow to the T. It's only a guideline that should be flexible for you. Also, as you approach retirement, you should be hopefully out of debt. If you're not out of debt, that may be a significant factor in your inability to have a comfortable retirement. I do see a number of my clients, they're purchasing the next bigger home, so they buy up, but their sources of income are going down. And so I have to kind of guide them to reconsider purchasing up, or they're going to be working longer and spending less, or a combination of those. So you want to be careful of that. Also, seek your investment advisor if you're able to. consider phased retirement, going part-time, or even, pretending you're retired and try it out for a month or so. Number 5 on that one would have been really this way: if you don't have your wills, trusts, or powers of attorney, power of attorney for healthcare with a waiver for HIPAA, and your living will, I call that when to pull the plug if you're terminal. You really want to have that taken care of before you are actually retired. And if you've already got those done years ago, I suggest you have them reviewed every 3 to 5 years by your attorney to make sure that the laws do change over time. So you want to probably upgrade or revise your wills or trusts, not because you've changed your mind on who gets what, but the laws may have changed and the language has changed. So you want to make sure it's most current. Another one is the HIPAA waiver, especially now with the pandemic. People want to get medical records for second opinions, or they want to have ability to see their loved ones in the hospital or a facility. And a lot of places were prohibiting that, which is very, very harsh and stressful for all the people involved. So I'm even having my own attorney redo my medical authorization. And so that my siblings are able to do what I want them to do in the case I'm incapacitated or in a hospital or facility that has a lot of prohibitions. And so I want to be able to trump that and bypass those restrictions. And then have the conversation. Maybe it's sleeping. There we go. So 18 months before retirement, this is where you would hopefully hire an investment advisor for at least maybe 25% of your portfolio, just to give you an idea of, if you're on the right track or you're going to fall over a cliff. And I've worked with some that were bringing out, several millions of dollars from their 401k, had no clue what to do with it. And so we pieced it out so that he would have control of it. That was the one that took us over 6 months to get out from their 401k. It was a nightmare. He basically got the runaround, and well, I should say the runaround. People that we talked to didn't know what they were talking about. And so it was always have talked to someone else or talk to someone else or talk to someone else, which it was very frustrating for everyone involved. So you want to take control of it, roll it out, and probably put things in place where you know what's coming out, you know where it is, you know how to contact those accounts and those advisors for those pieces of your portfolio. And then, the very good one is develop an investment policy statement. Humans tend to invest very emotionally. When the market is high, they want to buy. When the market is low, they want to sell. Now that's the exact opposite of what most people should be doing. When you're buying high, and then you panic when the market goes down. So you buy high and pay more than necessary, and you sell when the market's going down. Then you just lost. You have a paper loss. You have an actual loss. So it's probably not in your best interest. So having an investment policy to say when you decide ahead of time when you're going to purchase or sell something, and that should help guide and control your emotions that may be getting the better of you in a stressful time in the market. And we're seeing the markets are swinging like multi-hundred points every day now. And I see people are getting very concerned. So if you have something that you have written before, it helps calm you down a little bit more. Okay, 13 months before retirement, you might want to start collecting your company benefits as a retiree. Now, I've been working now for about 22 years in this, and I'm seeing a lot of companies are changing the retirement benefits over the last 20 years. And it's because the cost of retiree benefits is just getting very difficult for a lot of companies to handle. So you should keep on top of what their benefits are changing to. I've had clients that had full health insurance as a retiree after 70, they had life insurance, they had health insurance, and they had some other benefits, but over time, those were pulled from them. And so after age 70, when you get a letter from your former employer saying that, sorry, none of that is now available, go figure out on your own. It's a time that really panicked that particular client. And I got a call, and we kind of had to work through how she was going to then take care of her health insurance and those things. You have to sign up with Medicare and all those kind of things. So you really want to get a hold of your employer's benefits as a retiree and make sure you understand what they are and then how to access them and when to apply for them. All right. Oops. Okay, 12 months. If you have a more complicated situation in terms of tax planning, and James Liu, the CPA, will be talking more at another session on tax planning, but you may want to start tax planning with a CPA or a tax accountant and an advisor just to make sure you're on the right track. And 6 months, this is where you're going to accumulate your company retirement plans, see what's going on, gather your Social Security forms to apply for benefits. Social Security, typically I suggest to my clients, Social Security, it's based on the date of the year of your birth, your date of birth. And so you have to look up, when you would be eligible for full Social Security benefits. Medicare is an important one, assuming it's still going to be around. If you turn 65 and you have, I would suggest 6 months, really, at least 6 months before, apply for your Medicare benefits. Also, for item number 4, look for Medigap or supplemental coverage to supplement what Medicare does not pick up. And right now, I know there's Plan F is no longer available, quote unquote. Plan G is now available, but there's a number of plans that may or may not be appropriate for you. So this is where you would talk with your advisor to see which one would be a suitable one for you. Whether you go to an Advantage plan or you go into the original Medicare A and B with a gap plan and a supplemental drug coverage, that's something for you to decide depending on how much services you use. How much health insurance do you actually trigger? If you're very unhealthy and you have a lot of visits to the doctor, it may be appropriate for original A and B. But if you're very healthy and you know how to navigate the system, Advantage plans are very good too. They're very cost effective. But again, if you need specialists or certain medications, they may not be available in an Advantage plan. This is where you would look more closely with your advisor on this. If you're considering additional life or health insurance or long-term care, you really should have it well before 6 months. You should have it in place because it can take months to get a policy of any kind, especially nowadays with the pandemic closing down a lot of businesses, closing. A lot of people are out. They're not working. Their systems are not as efficient as they were 3 years ago. And so it's taking longer for everything to happen. So you may actually want to do those kind of securing additional life, health, long-term care, or those others kinds of coverage well before 6 months. And then review your rules. This is where you're going to go back and look at your investment policy, and you're going to look at your portfolio, where you're going to start drawing down and just do a kind of a review on that. All right, 60 days before retirement, you would have you complete anything. You really should complete any purchase of any kind of insurance or coverage. You should be submitting your retirement forms to your employer, and you should set up your direct deposit and tax withholding if that's what you prefer for your retirement payments. A lot of people will, withhold whether it's 10, 15, 20% for taxes, for income tax, and then the rest, the net would be direct deposited into their banking or checking account. So it makes life a little easier for some people. Other people prefer a paper check, so you would just set it up to have it mailed to your address of record. Okay, now here's one that you want to be careful. It's called Look Out for the Retirement Gotchas. Now I know probably a number of you may be teaching in the teaching profession, and you may be with TRS. And there's certain, on the TRS system, you may have payout options for their pension. I call it, my opinion has been the TRS is probably one of the best pension plans in the state of Texas, assuming we still have funds to fund it. But I've seen cases where the individual that was working under the TRS system would try to pick the highest payout, which is a single life, not realizing that once they passed away, all payments stop on a single life. And this actually happened with a husband who worked, and his wife was a homemaker, and he picked the highest payout. Well, he died within a year. She got nothing because he took a single life. So when you do your payouts, you want to make sure you pick one that, and I recommend, if you love your spouse, unless you're fighting or going to get a divorce, which I do not pray for, if you love your spouse, you want to seriously consider a joint and 100% survivor. So that means if one passes, the other one continues to get 100% of what the working spouse had gotten. And they have other payout rates, but typically, happy marriage, I would always suggest to my clients, the 100% joint and survivor, pick that one. Life insurance. Yeah, life insurance from your employer. I've seen enough to know over these many years, the life insurance decreases over time. The employer pays for it. And it may start off at something like 25,000 or 50,000 or in some cases, but by the time you reach 70 or 75, it's dropped down to maybe 5,000. And most people don't realize that. So you want to check with the employer, what does it drop down to at what age? And sometimes it just totally disappears. Again, because the employer is paying for it. If the cost is going up, the employer may not want to take up that cost after a certain time. So check with your employer. Okay, health insurance as a retiree. Again, check, are you really going to have health insurance as a retiree? And also check if they are decreasing benefits over time. And I'm seeing this in the various industries and different companies, that they, out of cost concerns, they almost are forced to reduce their health insurance benefits. Debt. If you have credit card, mortgages, car loans, personal loans to loved ones, home improvement loans, whatever, you really should be very careful and be out of all debt by the time you retire. Again, scripture is very strong on being debt-free, and really taking care of yourself and your loved ones. Long-term care. I will talk about long-term care more in a future session, but you should also at this time be sharing with if you have parents who are alive, you should be also sharing what you're doing so that in the event they need your help, you know where to help and go to and access all their accounts and what plans and things that they have in place for themselves, so that when the time comes that you can assist them, and vice versa. If you become the one that needs help, they can help you or your siblings or whoever. Then next one is a couple other considerations. You may have a blended family. I've seen enough where, yeah, there's blended families and one says, this is all my money and that's all your money. And these are my kids and those are your kids. And we're not going to mix anything. Well, make sure you have that well planned and laid out, because you don't want any of them fighting. I do have clients that they walk into the home and they will hand their people little Post-it pads and a pen or a pencil, and they say, okay, write your name on it and put your name on the things you want. So they put a little Post-it note, and so ahead of time they kind of decide who gets what, and that might work out for some families. Okay, if you also you want to update your beneficiaries on all your life insurance, all your retirement plans, your IRAs, your pay on death or transfer on death bank accounts. I just had a client call me, and unfortunately, her daughter, 61 or so years old, passed away, and she was named as her beneficiary on some accounts. And so I just sent her the forms to update her beneficiary. So she's got to change that. And so I just got that back today, and I faxed that into the company. And then another one, another client had a severe falling out with 2 of her 3 sons. And so I suggested to her, after it's been a year after her husband passed, I said, don't make any big decisions. Let's wait at least a year until you know who you want to send off, your items to, and your life insurance, your annuities, your retirement plans and whatnot. So she's going to be coming over and in 2 weeks. And she's basically going to write 2 of her sons out of her will, and all her life insurance and all her annuities and all her accounts. And so that's something you might want to consider. If there's that kind of dysfunction going on where we really don't hope for that. We've been praying for that family. But you want to make sure you update your beneficiaries on everything, because and we'll talk about this in the estate planning section. In pretty much I would say 99.9% of the cases, anything that has a beneficiary designation, your IRA, your annuity, your life insurance, those will trump a will every single time. People think if they write in the will, my lovely wife gets everything. But the IRA beneficiary life insurance said my first wife get, my ex-wife, or my child or something, someone else gets it. Actually, the beneficiary will trump where the will said it would go to his current wife. Now, Texas has changed the laws a little bit to kind of avoid that oversight, but it still creates a lot of trouble when you do not update your different beneficiaries designations. Okay, now, yeah, I talked a little bit about the loss of a spouse. So this is something you really want to address at some point, probably well before the person passes. If they're incapacitated, you want to know, are they the type? Now, I've had some clients say, well, Karen, I told my wife when I'm terminal, just put me in a wheelchair and shove me over a cliff. I said, well, then you better make sure it looks like an accident. Otherwise you'll be charged with murder. So, and they're serious about this. You want to honor the wishes of your loved ones, but you also need to let them know what you want. As I said earlier, in Asian communities, it's often thought of as bad luck, or you wish me harm. And hopefully in a Christian setting, this is not the case. You really want to share and be very transparent and open with your loved ones so they know how best to care for you. We've had families where one side of the family wants to prolong daddy's life, who's bedridden and out of it. And the other side, and they'll spend every penny, okay? And the other side of the family wants to pull the plug. And they're fighting and fighting and fighting. And so what happens is the family breaks up. And so now you have not only losing a father, but you're losing your family and your relationship. So if the father had just indicated to his family and his adult children and those that could understand what his wishes were, I bet you a lot of that fighting would never have happened. So if you can share that with your loved ones, your adult children, your parents, that would be a great thing. So no one's guessing. Okay. Now, okay. Now would be a good time to consider what your costs might be. Kind of sit down, estimate your costs. But if you're a real engineer in your mind, many engineer types have it almost down to the dollar, sometimes even to the penny. And that's fine, but life happens and it can throw you off. So at least estimate what your living expenses will be. Next, prepare your budget. Where are your sources of income coming in from? Social Security, TRS. Some are very fortunate. They work in a dual system. They get both 100% Social Security and 100% of TRS. I think UT system, MD Anderson, they're dual systems. Others, if you work in just an ISD, HISD, that's TRS only, unless you work 30 full years in other employment before TRS, then Social Security will, your Social Security payment will be dinged. Let me put it that way. So you want to make sure you know how much you're going to get, and so that you can plan accordingly. So, and then see if you're able to actually fund what you want in retirement. If not, you may just want to either work a little longer, spend a little less, or do a combination of both. All right. Now, when you prepare your budget, I'll show you what some of the Texas numbers are. You might want to keep track of your spending for a nice year and kind of see where it's going. And I've noticed a lot of younger generation, they eat out a lot. So you may be surprised at how much is spent every year, whether it's Starbucks or picking up, going through the restaurant and ordering your food or whatever. And it's your decision, but you might want to track how much is really going out the door. An average couple, just on average, will spend 4,000 to 4675 a month. So that's about 48,000 to 56,000 a year in general across the U.S. Now, this is assuming you have no debt, no mortgage. There's just no debt of any kind. If you have mortgage and other kinds of debt, you better be upping your budget to handle that in your retirement. Now, for Texas, the total expenditure for a couple is about a little over $44,000 a year. Now, to add a little cushion, it's suggested that you add an additional 20% to that, which would be about $11,000 in addition. So for a couple, it would be about a little over $55,000 to be, which is pretty much in line with what we just saw in the prior slide. And this was just done, a couple of weeks ago from that, and they did it state by state. So if you're going to move to a different state, follow that Jordan Rosenfeld thing, and you can pull it up. If you're moving to a different state, they can, it goes state by state, and you can see what their average costs are in particular states. But I just wanted to look primarily only at Texas. Now, if you're moving to California, Hawaii, New York, you better add a lot of money to that numbers. Okay. All right, and this is just an example of some budget spending guidelines. Honestly, this is just a guideline. A lot of people, they don't follow it. They just do what is appropriate for their situation. And you can go online, and there's all kinds of budget guidelines that you can look at and see which one fits you best. And you can add categories or subtract categories depending on your situation. All right. I don't know how to take that off. Yeah. Estimate your expenses and estimate your sources of income is number one. And then subtract sources of, I'm sorry, let me get to that one. Yeah, it's estimate your annual expenses and then subtract your expected sources of retirement income, whether it's Social Security, teacher retirement system, your pensions, your annuities, your money under the mattress, money in the bank, wherever you have it. And then add up your current other retirement savings, such as your 401k, your 403b, your 457 or other retirement plans, simple IRAs, whatever you have from your current employer. And then you decide on a drawdown rate. Now, typically in past, it's been a 4% drawdown rate, but at the rate of cost of living going up and inflation, the suggestion is to use less than 3% drawdown for your retirement years. Again, it all depends. And if the market is very volatile and swings up and down, that really throws it off a lot. So you just have to fine tune your drawdown over the years in your retirement. And then compare your requirements with your results and see if you're pretty much on track or if you're way off, and then you need to make some adjustments. And this is where it might be helpful to have an advisor also assist you in taking a nice look at that. This is just an example of other income minus their Social Security, their teacher retirement system, pensions and annuities. And then just their current retirement savings was $953,500, and the drawdown rate was used was 3%. So they would say, okay, we'll draw down $28,605 a year. And so their shortfall, if you look at the top, was only $19,000. If they're drawing down 3% from their current retirement savings, that's more than enough to supply them with their estimated retirement money needs. They would have a little surplus of over $9,000 a year. Now, that's all hypothetical because we don't know how inflation will go. We don't know how their actual spending experience will be in retirement. It could be that amount, or it could be more or less. So this is just to get you close to what you would expect to need. Now, I'm just going to finish it out, and then we can go into question and answers. Really understand that God owns everything. We do not own anything. You are you are a steward. Hopefully you're a good steward. If you're not, you'll see it run through your hands pretty quick. And number 3, in all things, whether good or bad, in all things, praise God. Because I'll give you an example. When my father died very suddenly, mom had no income, even though she was trained as a teacher, but she never taught because she was always helping dad in his office and talking to the patients, sending out bills and things. And she still had a mortgage to pay. There were 5 kids, ages 8 to 16. All of us were still in school. And I think dad at that time each of us got $100 for our college education before he passed. That wasn't very much, but that's what he did well before he thought he would even pass. And so mother's, not only her health insurance plan was, God, please don't let him get sick or die because I don't have money to pay for the health insurance, but also for raising us and putting us all through college. And she actually went back and got a master's. 3 of my sisters got masters, and I went on beyond that and got the 3rd degree. But when she had no job, no income, a mortgage, 5 children to feed, all 8 to 16 years of age, her prayer was, Lord, I have to go out and get a job. And she pounded the pavement for months. She got a job as a preschool teacher's aide. She earned $400 a month. And this is how she put food on our table for a while. And then she eventually worked her way up and became the principal of the school. So God is gracious, and she really trusted him to provide for everything, which he really did. Well, I really thank you for your attention, and I would love to answer any questions that you may have.